Welcome everyone to episode 3 of Deep Dive, the official podcast of Nightdive Studios. We want to start by saying we appreciate all the comments, love and feedback that we've received on the first 2 episodes. We read through these as much as we can, and we're always taking your suggestions and feedback into account when it comes to improving the podcast, so keep them coming in the comments below. For those that don't know who I am yet, I'm Demetrius, your host, also known as MVG here on YouTube. Joining me on today's episode are my co-hosts, Locke and Morgan, and in this episode, we'll be taking a closer look at one of our more recent remasters with Star Wars Dark Forces. And this is something I personally can really get behind. I love Dark Forces. Delving into the depths of Dark Forces today will be Nightdive CEO Stephen Kick, as well as members of our development team, including Max Waine. But that's not all. We love giveaways on this podcast, as you know, so if you want to win a free code for Rise of the Triad Ludicrous Edition, then stick with us until the end of the episode for a special question prompt. Today's first news segment isn't a particularly positive one, but I do think that we need to cover it here on the podcast. Everyone who works in the video game industry has been affected one way or another by layoffs. It's absolutely decimated the industry in 2023, and there doesn't seem to be any signs that it's slowing down in 2024. In February, Sony laid off 900 people, EA laid off 670 people. In March, Creative Assembly laid off 240 people. In April, Take-Two laid off 600. Microsoft in May with 1,900 people and multiple studio closures. And these are just the high-profile ones. According to the VG Layoffs website, so far, approximately 10,000 people have lost their jobs. And for me personally, my parent company, Embracer, has been in the news many, many times. And every time I see their name in the news, I wonder when my turn is coming next. And it's absolutely gut-wrenching. People I know in the industry have lost their jobs. Some have left the industry entirely. And to be honest, I don't really blame them. And I think this is all due to the reliance on licensed IP, live service games that tend to fail, and most importantly, the ever-expanding budgets, time, and resources required to build AAA games seemingly has become unsustainable. We've seen brand new IP literally close studios with one release, and I'm talking about a game such as Callisto Protocol, which I thought was actually quite good, even though it didn't sell very well. And then there's Microsoft. They stepped in and now they've taken the wheel and they want that return on that $68 billion Activision Blizzard acquisition/investment. And look, unfortunately, I wish I had the answers and I could tell you everything's going to be okay, but I'm just being realistic here. But what I can do is continue to use my voice and my platform to continue to bring awareness to the situation. And look, at the end of last year, I did say that things were probably going to get worse before they got better. And I think we're in the getting worse phase right now. And here we are. But onto a much more positive news story. Back in February, Nightdive released an out-of-this-world remaster with Star Wars Dark Forces. And it's been quite the journey for the Nightdive development team, acquiring the rights to working together to release a faithful as possible remaster. And they did an amazing job. Now, for more insight into what went into remastering this classic, here's Locke with members of the Nightdive development team, including Max Waine and Nightdive CEO Stephen Kick.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm here with the one, the only, Stephen Kick of Nightdive Studios. Welcome, Stephen.
Hey, Locke. Always a pleasure.
We've been clamoring to get you on the show, and we're talking Star Wars today. I think both of us are fans of Star Wars, and you know, with the remaster of Dark Forces, I thought it would be a good idea to kind of chat about what goes into a remaster like Dark Forces. Was, you know, probably one of your first shooters you played with your first computer. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, take me through a little bit of why were you interested in I mean, might be an obvious question, but why were you interested in remastering Dark Forces?
Well, you know, seeing as it was my first game, it just had a very, very special place in my heart. I remember getting stuck on the third level like everybody else did in the Anode City, having to go to the store, buy the strategy guide because no internet back then.
Yep.
Completing the game, feeling very accomplished, and then just being unbelievably hyped for when Dark Forces Jedi Knight got announced. That I think changed the trajectory of my life because it was at that point where I became so excited about something that I would consider myself a real fan at that point.
Yeah.
So when Nightdive was started, I think Dark Forces was very high up on that list of games that I wanted to revisit. Well, with a lot of our games, it was just a matter of timing. I think, we had approached Disney previously about doing something like this. And I think that after Quake and Quake 2 came out and those games were received the way that they were, it really put Nightdive on the map for a corporation the size of Disney.
Yeah.
And I feel like they were probably felt a lot more confident in our abilities and our ability to take something that prestigious and do it right. Just that I am overwhelmingly just pleased with how the game came out, how it's received. All the people that have been messaging us and leaving us notes and stuff on YouTube and Twitter about how much they're enjoying revisiting the game. And I mean, this is what it's all about for us, is bringing these old games back for people to enjoy and hopefully to be inspired to make their own games.
Yep.
So yeah, thank you.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I am here with Bren, who was part of the art team for the Star Wars Dark Forces Remaster. Thank you for joining me today, Bren.
Yeah, no worries. How's it going?
I'm doing really well. I'm really excited to chat with you because, the remaster was amazing and you did some really interesting work on it. So why don't you first tell me a little bit about yourself and how you came to work on Star Wars Dark Forces?
I ended up getting discovered by Nightdive, I guess, because I posted a YouTube video of this Quake 2 intro video. And I got brought on to help out with that. And then it's just been no looking back since, just project to project. So
yeah, you worked on Dark Forces, did a lot of the cutscenes. Why don't you take me into a little bit of your process on what that entails?
Yeah, so it was actually a pretty unique one. I mean, I haven't been in the industry super long, but just the fact that in these cutscenes that they had for Dark Forces, you have a mixture of 3D models, you got 2D painted characters, you've got clips from the live action movies, they're all just kind of bringing it all together. So yeah, if you ever see Katarn and Mothma, aboard the ship, obviously the background is a bit of a 3D asset, and we've kind of tried to marry those things by painting over that as well, kind of doing some line work and just bring the art styles closer together. So my part in that is doing 3D models for the backgrounds.
Yep.
Lighting, everything, just trying to recreate the scene as faithfully as possible. And then Ben takes over with the characters. So Ben Chandler was our character artist for that one. He does the 2D painted sprites for those.
Nice. We say remaster and people, don't necessarily know that a lot of these scenes are being built from scratch, recomposited, retextured, re-everything to, it takes a lot of work. So I really appreciate you coming on and shedding some light on that. So thank you so much for your time today.
No worries at all. I was just going to say, too, when people don't realize that it's completely made from scratch, that's the best.
That's a good thing.
the best compliment,
Yeah. It means you've done your job right.
Yeah, exactly.
Welcome back, everybody. I am here with Max, who was the project lead on the Dark Forces Remaster. Welcome, Max. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Locke. Thanks for having me on. It's really fun to be here. It's a good opportunity. So primarily, I am a programmer. On Dark Forces, I was also the project lead.
Yes.
my role as a programmer at Nightdive started in 2019. Before that, I had known basically, at the time, pretty much the entirety of the Kex team beforehand.
Right.
And before that joining, that is, I primarily was just a student at university. But in that time, I was working on an open source Doom source port.
Oh, nice.
So that kind of gave me some of the connections I needed to help get into things. And also it gave me a lot of the experience that ended up making me like a very suitable candidate to join Nightdive when they needed somebody. The project lead position primarily was me doing liaising with Disney, who then did their liaising with Lucasfilm Games. Besides that, there were a reasonable number of just shots that I ended up being the person who was calling them. So I don't know, it was a lot of difficult decisions. There was stuff about scope that I had to consider, and it also meant that in certain areas I was the person kind of pushing people, delegating, and in some cases, like the artists did a phenomenal job, but there was a lot of like going back and forth and making sure that iteration was done so that the assets were as good as possible.
Right.
The big thing as project lead that I personally pushed for was the inclusion of the vault.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that.
So the vault, it's interesting. You might think that it came around entirely because of the success of Quake 2's vault. Not exactly. It definitely gave us the kind of the ability to do further things like that because it proved that it was successful. But even before then, I had lamented to another one of my coworkers. It's like, man, we have all of these development assets for Star Wars Dark Forces. It would be really cool if we could do more digital museum type stuff. So that was something that I really wanted to do. And then when Quake 2 came out with the id Vault, which was not something I was involved with, but ended up being a tremendous success and everyone loved it, it really gave us the ability to take that idea and be like, this is proven, it works, we can include it. I've already spent in my free time far too many hours just looking through the assets because it's interesting to me. So I already knew, I already had a good amount of examples of what would be cool for inclusion.
And the extra, the unreleased level is really nice that you guys got that in there.
I am so happy that we managed to include the Avenger in. We can talk more about that later because that will... I do think that being a programmer is very useful, being a project lead on stuff like this, because, you know, I'm not just going to spout some rubbish and completely misunderstand the scope of a request, the difficulty of something that I'm going to ask of somebody that I'm delegating to.
You know what it takes. You know what the ask is. It's super.
Everybody was a real joy to work with on this project. I can't speak highly enough about Disney, Lucasfilm Games, the localizers that we work with, the entire team at Nightdive that I worked with, you know, the programmers, the artists. It would take me way too long to shout every single individual out because, damn, thanks everyone. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Absolutely.
And thank you for having me on, Locke. It's a real privilege. Every time I get to do any sort of interview, it's a real privilege. And it's, you know, I got into working in video games for a reason. And every time that I'm able to do something like this, it's hard to describe the feeling. Because, you know, I got into this because I'm so damn passionate about games. And to be here speaking about this sort of thing in this position is unbelievable. Dark Forces was a very rewarding project for all of us, but it was a difficult one, I would say.
Yeah.
Like, just
Definitely. Cool. Well,
no project is easy, but
no.
yeah, it was very high expectations, I think.
Yeah, while you're working with Disney, there's going to be a certain threshold of caliber that you need to hit.
Yeah, and
so
for a game as important as Dark Forces, really
totally. So,
something you really have to do justice.
absolutely.
Speaking of limited run, we're excited to announce that packout and shipping has begun for physical editions of our System Shock remake. More specifically, Limited Run has informed us they're targeting July 8th to kick off the shipping process in full. We thank everyone for their patience and look forward to sharing additional shipment updates with you later this month. If you have any questions or need technical support, please let us know by reaching out to our team at hello@nightdivestudios.com. Last episode, we asked the community what their favorite scary movie is. Here are some of our favorite answers. From @NatchHoant, my favorite horror movie is probably the original Halloween from 1978. I rewatch it every year for Halloween. The Thing is another one of my favorites. Both were directed by John Carpenter, incidentally. Love what you're doing. I first played Turok through your master and will play the Shadow Man remaster. Discovered them through Valiant Comics. Shout out to @VGMFan20XX who dropped the correct answer to last week's giveaway question and noted the song Time Trapped Isle is still dope AF. While @Vibe1721 said that picking a favorite horror film is difficult, but I will go with William Friedkin's The Exorcist from 1973. Often imitated, but never replicated. From @KeithMcKenna9464, my favorite horror movie would have to be John Carpenter's The Thing. I saw it when I was younger, and as an adult, I took the opportunity to show it to my kids. Great memories, great movie, great game too. Wink. Honorable mention to Bram Stoker's Dracula. @Oddball13131 noted their favorite horror movie is Nightmare on Elm Street, all movies. That's why I hope you can remaster the PC DOS and NES versions of the games at some point. Freddy is alive and has to come back. Was another nice episode with great information, thanks for that. @NopeF1SH642 said their favorite scary movie is Jaws, and explained that sparingly showing the monster coming from the dark depths really emphasizes the point that nothing is scarier. Despite it, I still love sharks. I'm looking forward to Nightdive jumping back into those dark depths to bring back these treasures. While @OfficeDullard8722 said their favorite scary movie, and just plain favorite movie, is Alien. @CyanTopHat gave a well-deserved shout-out to Evil Dead, saying, my favorite scary movie of all time is Evil Dead 2, without a doubt. It's the perfect example of mixing both horror and comedy. Different genres that normally would cancel each other out manage to work symbiotically together because it's that well crafted. Its impact on the gaming industry is also massive, with weapons like the chainsaw and boomstick being FPS classics. Also, please remaster Silent Hill 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those games desperately need it. And lastly, bonus shout out to @Matthew Shep for their stellar remaster remake request, saying, yep, just Matthew again, waiting for that Return to Castle Wolfenstein re-release by my favorite son, Nightdive. As we approach the end of the podcast, it's time to drop the question prompt that, when answered correctly, will give you the chance to win one of 5 giveaway codes for Rise of the Triad Ludicrous Edition. Ready? What is the name of Kyle Katarn's ship in Star Wars Dark Forces Remaster? Here's a hint. Don't ask me where I found that. Leave a comment on YouTube or Twitter with the correct answer. We'll reply to the winner's comments by July 19th with an email on where they can receive their code. Did you get last week's question right? Let's find out. The correct answer to who composed the original soundtrack for 1995's Killing Time is Robert Vieira.
Before we wrap up this episode, let's answer one last question. Since we're talking Star Wars, what's everyone's favorite Star Wars character? I've got to go with Darth Maul. Now, I thought it was such a cool character design, built it up with all of the previews to be this evil, menacing, agile Sith Lord, and I was obsessed with it. It was the first time I had seen an alternate lightsaber to just the regular sword style. It was that bow staff style, so that was really cool. The red, the face, the horns, it all came together really well. And unfortunately, he was killed off really early, and they didn't really give his character time to shine or flourish or anything like that. But my favorite Star Wars character is Darth Maul.
Oh, I have a bad feeling about this. My favorite Star Wars character might be a bit cliched, but it has to be Han Solo. I loved the character when I was growing up, reading the books. He's this kind of anti-hero where he initially hand waves all responsibility and just wants to get paid and move on and do his own thing with no responsibility and care for others at all. But over the course of the Star Wars story, he becomes a legendary character, and of course, the Millennium Falcon is the coolest starship in the galaxy. I mean, who didn't want to be Han Solo growing up? I don't think you were meant to like Han Solo in the first movie. I certainly didn't, until the very end, of course, when he saves the day. I also remember reading the Empire Strikes Back book back in the early 80s when I was a kid, and that torture sequence really teared me up. And that's when I realized he was my favorite character. So Han Solo became a legendary character across the galaxy, started out as a smuggler, and ended up being a war hero of the rebellion. So for me, he is far and away my favorite Star Wars character.
For me, there are so many incredible characters in the Star Wars universe, it's hard to narrow it down to just one. But if I had to pick, I'd probably say Yoda. First of all, he's a badass. The fight scene between him and Darth Sidious in Revenge of the Sith remains like one of my favorite fight scenes, just in general. And he's also a really wise teacher. Empire Strikes Back is probably my favorite film in the series, and part of it is because of the scene of Yoda training Luke. I just think it's heartwarming and meaningful, and I think his lessons are applicable to anybody. You know, things like failure being your greatest teacher, size matters not, the truths we cling to depend on our point of view. I really do love Yoda, but bonus character shout out to Princess Leia and her actress, the late great real-life badass Carrie Fisher. Also, like related but unrelated fun fact, I actually went to the same middle school, high school, and junior college as Star Wars creator George Lucas, who grew up in Modesto, California, as did I. He's older than I am, so we never had classes together or anything like that, but I've always found it to be just a really kind of cool coincidence that out of all of the schools in Modesto, and there are several, he also went to Roosevelt Junior High, Thomas Downey High, Modesto Junior College, so I guess also shout out to Modesto, California, who's not a Star Wars character, but it's a place. It's definitely a place. Same as always, we'd love to hear from you on who your favorite Star Wars character is. Leave us a comment and we might feature it in the next episode of Deep Dive.
And with that, it's going to be all for today's episode. Thanks to everyone again who joined us for this episode of Deep Dive, where we did take a look at the Star Wars Dark Forces Remaster in more detail. Don't forget to comment for your chance to win a free code for Rise of the Tried Ludicrous Edition. Bye for now.